Under the scorching sun of Kruger National Park in South Africa, the sky was no longer a gentle blue, but had turned a stark flaming white. The temperature had exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, causing the air above the arid ground to vibrate continuously like a heated silk ribbon. Jack, a ranger with sun-bronzed skin and eyes accustomed to the harshness of the savannah, was driving an old Land Rover through scorched thorn bushes. The roar of the engine seemed to lose its breath amidst this suffocating silence. Jack stopped the vehicle when he spotted a strange dark shape in the distance. It was not dry grass, but vultures, the uninvited guests of death, beginning to land on the withered acacia branches, silently waiting for a cruel feast. He held his binoculars, his hands trembling slightly due to the heat and anxiety. Emerging in the lens was a dark yellow form lying motionless on the cracked earth. Coming closer, Jack's heart tightened. It was an adult lioness, the ruler of this land, but now she looked so small and fragile. Up close, her eyes were dull, seemingly covered by a film of dust and exhaustion. Her jaws were slightly open, her breath intermittent, and so weak it was hard to recognize. Jack knelt down, carefully observing the surrounding tracks. There was no blood, no poacher footprints, and no bullet wounds. She is suffering from severe heat stroke, Jack whispered in a raspy voice. Her natural cooling system has collapsed before the fury of the sun. A race against time officially began, because here, every passing minute could be the final minute of a dynasty. The silence of the savannah at this moment no longer carried a sense of peace. Instead, it was thick with a deadly pressure. Jack knew he did not have much time. At this temperature threshold, the internal organs of the lioness were being cooked from the inside. He took a deep breath, suppressing his worry to make room for professional skills honed over decades. First, Jack had to ensure safety. Even though the animal was near death, the instinct of a predator could rise at any time if she felt threatened in her delirium. He stood at a distance, loading a mild sedative into a specialized rifle. A dry pop sounded, the needle pinning accurately into the thigh of the lion. After 10 minutes of tense waiting, when certain she was completely in a deep sleep, Jack dared to approach. His first action was to establish a temporary oasis. Jack quickly pulled a large tar from the truck, using iron stakes and ropes to tie it firmly to the acacia tree and the pickup body to create a vast shade. A temperature difference of even a few degrees was a miracle right now. Next, he carried heavy water cans from the truck. Instead of pouring it all at once, Jack poured water slowly, but continuously onto large blood vessel areas such as the groin and armpits of the lion, while using wet towels to wipe the scorched sand off the golden fur. Watching the cool water soak into the withered fur and evaporate immediately under the heat, Jack muttered, "Hang in there, girl. Water is here, do not give up." However, the greatest challenge lay ahead, lifting a creature weighing nearly 150 kilograms onto the truck. Jack lowered the tailgate of the pickup and installed a steel sliding ramp system. He spread a specialized rescue stretcher on the ground. Then with all his strength, he used his shoulders and hips to roll the heavy body of the lioness onto the stretcher, fastening the safety straps to ensure she would not flip over. Now it was time for the winch system to work. Jack hooked the iron hook to the stretcher, looping the cable over a load-bearing bar at the back of the truck to create lifting force. The winch motor started to hum, breaking the thick atmosphere. The cable tightened like a guitar string, and the stretcher began to inch up the ramp. Jack controlled the remote while using his entire body weight to keep the stretcher from sliding off the track. Sweat poured down his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he did not dare let go for a single second. Amidst the sound of the winch, another sound rose that made Jack's spine go cold. The savage laughter of hyenas from the bushes behind. They had smelled the water and the scent of a weak lion. Jack glanced at the rifle leaning against the door, then back at the lioness on the stretcher. He could not give up. He sped up the winch, gritted his teeth, and gave one final push. When a stretcher finally sat securely in the truck bed, Jack slammed the tailgate shut. He grabbed a rifle and fired a shot into the air to scare away the hungry eyes lurking in the brush. The pickup began to move, leaving behind the disappointed vultures. In the rearview mirror, Jack saw red dust swirling up, obscuring the figures of the regretful hyenas. The first race was won, but the real battle to reclaim life for this queen had only just begun at the medical station. Jack's pickup stopped in front of the wildlife rescue station when the sunset had dyed a corner of the sky crimson, casting long, tilting shadows on the ground. The atmosphere here was completely different from the brutality of the savannah. It was a specially designed recovery enclosure with a solid roof, heat-dissipating stone walls, and large industrial fans running at full speed, creating a constant flow of cool air. With the help of the pulley system at the station, Jack moved the Lioness onto a cool stone floor, the place that would be her recovery room in the coming days. The real battle now shifted to medicine and patience. Jack was no longer a brawny winch operator, but became as meticulous as a true nurse. He knelt beside the Lioness, carefully shaving a small patch of fur on her front leg to find a vein. Under the dim yellow light of the clinic, the needle pierced the thick skin accurately, and immediately after, drops of intravenous fluid began to flow steadily, bringing life into the exhausted body. "This is hope, girl," Jack whispered as he watched the saline and life-saving vitamins permeate the parched bloodstream of the beast. Night fell over the Kruger savannah. While the world outside was filled with roars and brutal hunts, the inside of the clinic held only the sound of rotating fans and the wheezing breath of the special patient. Jack did not go to sleep. He sat on the floor, leaning his back against the iron door, holding his ranger journal, but his eyes never leaving the chest of the Lioness. He used a soft cotton towel, soaked in warm water, to begin cleaning her body. It was a task requiring absolute tenderness. Jack gently wiped away the red dust clinging to every strand of fur. As the grime washed away, the majestic beauty of a queen gradually emerged under the dim light. Old scars on her shoulders told of battles to protect the pride and territory. A life full of pride now, depending entirely on the compassion of a human. Around 2 in the morning, a small change occurred that made the space suddenly so quiet that one could hear a heartbeat. Jack stood up abruptly when he saw the ears of the Lioness twitch, a natural reflex as the nervous system began to wake. Next, a small growl, a vibration from deep in the throat, was emitted. It was not the powerful roar of a predator, but the weak plea of a living soul trying to reconnect with reality. Jack held his breath, motionless. The dull eyes from the afternoon now slowly opened, reflecting the flickering light. In that moment, the gaze of the Lioness met Jack's eyes. There was no aggression, no predatory instinct, only an extreme confusion gradually replaced by a moment of stillness as she felt the coolness and the care from the man before her. She tried to lift her head, but then slumped back down tiredly, her breathing becoming more rhythmic and deep. Jack smiled, a satisfied smile appearing on his weary face. He knew her heart was strong enough to keep beating, and her reign on the savannah could not yet end. A week passed since that fateful day under the sun-scorched acacia tree. Time seemed to stand still in the recovery enclosure, where every millimeter of the lion's movement was carefully recorded by Jack. Thanks to tireless care and abundant nutrition, vitality returned to the beast miraculously. The muscles under the golden fur began to firm up again, rippling with strength after each of her restless laps in the confined space. Jack knew that the recovery of a predator lay not just in the body, but in the spirit. The wildness in those amber eyes had ignited again, and she no longer belonged to a place with neon lights or electric fans. On that morning, the Kruger sky was cooler than usual, as if nature itself was preparing for a great return. Jack and the support team placed the Lioness into a large, reinforced iron cage and set on the truck bed. He drove back to the exact coordinates where he had found her, the place where the boundary between life and death was once as thin as a hair. Along the way, Jack did not say a word, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror to ensure his special friend was all right. When the truck stopped, the vast savannah opened up with winds carrying the scent of dry grass and the characteristic warmth of the Mother Earth. Jack stepped down from the truck and climbed onto the cabin roof to ensure a safe distance. He took a deep breath, feeling the vibration of the space, then slowly pulled the chain controlling the cage door. A soft thud sounded as the iron door slid open. There was no rush or panic. The lioness stepped out slowly, full of authority. She paused at the threshold of the iron cage, sniffing the air of freedom, her eyes squinting against the brilliant sunlight pouring down on the golden fields of grass. The first steps touching the familiar hot ground seemed to carry a confirmation of her mastery over this land. But then a miraculous thing happened that made time stop. Instead of bolting into the bushes, the lioness suddenly stood still. She turned her body, directing her deep amber eyes toward Jack. In that moment, the space was so silent that one could hear the wind rustling through the thorn bushes. There was no threatening roar, nor the aggression of a wild beast. It was a look full of understanding, a silent acknowledgement between two beings who had walked across the line of life and death together. Jack stood motionless on the truck roof, his heart pounding, but his soul strangely at peace. He nodded slightly, a gesture of respect for the Lord of the Savanna. As if having received a final farewell, the lioness turned her head. She began to trot, a graceful and powerful gait toward the horizon. From afar, behind dense thickets, the calls of the pride began to sound. Jack narrowed his eyes to watch, seeing the faint silhouettes of other pride members waiting for their queen to return. The figure of the lioness grew smaller, merging into the yellow of the burnt grass and the brilliant sunset beginning to fall. Sovereignty was returned to its rightful owner, and Jack knew his mission was completed in the most perfect way. Jack's truck was still idling quietly in the vast space, but he did not want to leave just yet. He leaned against the hood, pulled out a dented thermos, took a sip of water, and looked toward the horizon where the figure of the lioness had just vanished into the wilderness. The Kruger's sunset never disappointed. It was brilliant and magnificent like an oil painting, dyeing the ancient baobab trees red and plating the burnt grass in gold. In the stillness of the late afternoon, Jack felt a relief spreading through his chest, a feeling that no money or fame could buy. He began to reflect on the fragility of life. Only a week ago, the most powerful creature of the savanna lay there, helpless against the heat of the sun, waiting for death under the claws of vultures. People often think we are the rulers of nature, Jack said softly to himself, his voice vanishing into the wind. But in reality, we are just lucky protectors. This rescue was not just about saving the life of an animal, but about maintaining the balance of an ecosystem that was already too wounded. Every individual returned is an affirmation that human compassion can still heal the scars that climate change or greed are causing. The story of the lioness would soon become part of the thick ranger journals at the rescue station, but for Jack, it was a profound lesson in connection. He remembered her final look, a moment where all barriers of language and race disappeared, leaving only pure respect between two living souls. That was the most precious reward, recognition from a wild ruler. It reminded him that in a modern world full of noise and division, primitive and good values still exist, if only we are willing to stop and reach out to help. Night began to fall quickly, the first stars of the South African sky starting to sparkle like diamonds on black velvet. Jack climbed into the cabin, turning the truck to return to the station. He knew that tomorrow there would be new challenges, other animals needing help, and the battle for conservation would never end. However, every time he felt tired or discouraged, he would remember the image of the lioness trotting toward her pride, toward her freedom and sovereignty. That was the fire that warmed his soul during lonely patrol nights. Before pressing the gas, Jack looked into the dash cam mounted on the vehicle, sharing final heartfelt words. The savanna is vast, but it is also very fragile. If you find faith from the journey of the lioness today, remember that each of our small actions can create ripples of change. Do not let your kindness be frozen or withered. Be the source of cool water. Be the shade for those who are weaker than you. The pickup rolled forward, its headlights cutting through the pitch-black night of Kruger. The story closed, but its spirit remained, spreading and urging us to believe in a future where humans and nature can coexist in harmony and love. Thank you for accompanying Jack on this meaningful patrol. The Savanna is still waiting, and we will meet again.